Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Dude, I Love That. I'm Liv, and today we're continuing the summer throwback Enneagram series, which, if you're new, I do this every summer. So basically, we throw it back to shows and movies from childhood and type the characters from them. And the difference today is going to be that we're doing a reality show. We're doing Laguna Beach, which is one of my all-time favorite shows, period. And I've always shied away from doing reality show typings because they're actual real people instead of just characters. And so even though they kind of are maybe playing a character for the show, these are produced moments. These aren't like their actual personalities. And so it can be really difficult to try and gauge things because moments are being produced. Plus, these are such little specks of their life. They've had years and years and years before we see them, and there's things going on that we can't tell. So we're seeing them in a very different role, but this is all just for fun. This is just having fun, throwing it out there, and also looking at the moments that we can see and then applying the Enneagram to that so that we can learn more about this helpful tool. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're doing season 1 today. There will be another episode where we do season 2, which is my favorite season, but we're doing season 1 because there's a lot of characters. I keep saying characters. I mean, they kind of are characters, right? They're like the show's, focus. But we're just doing season 1 people today, and then we'll jump in with season 2 next time. So first off, LC. Lauren Conrad's a funny one because I feel like I'm also drawing some of what I know from the hills. And so it might not be like the most genuine straight Laguna Beach reaction. So forgive me for that, but it's hard not to just let it all meld together in the old noggin. But nonetheless, we're here for it. Okay, so Lauren, I ended up typing as a one wing 9. And I know initially you might be like, why? But here's the thing. Ones are known as the reformer or the perfectionist. I prefer reformer because perfectionist sounds a little bit of a negative connotation situation. But seriously, ones really do want to be seen as morally good. They want to be seen as kind of the perfect role model, if you will. And we see a lot of times, even when Lauren introduces herself in season 1, episode 1, she says like, I've always been the nice girl and like the wholesome nice one. And ones really do want to project that image. It's important to them to be upstanding and to appear in a way like they really have it together. And I think that's what we see from Lauren. And even as we go on later in the hills, she really tends to look at things very black and white, right? Like there's several times where she's like, you're a bad person. That's something you will often hear a lot from ones because they are black and white thinkers. It's like good or bad. And their deepest fear is being morally wrong, corrupt, evil. And so for them, if they see someone that's doing something or they see a situation or, ones are big on injustice. And so a lot of times they're lawyers and they work at nonprofits. And so when they see that, it's hard for them not to call it out because remember, ones have the inner critic. And so it's kind of going in there and it's highlighting things to them that are wrong or that don't line up. And so that's where I think we're seeing some of the producing on that side of like, this story isn't really making any sense, or that's weird because they told me this and then this is happening. So it's probably very confusing for her. Again, we're seeing situations that aren't necessarily the most authentic, but we're going off of what we can see. So for her, she is calling out the inconsistencies and she does tend to want to be right. And she has developed her own sense of right and wrong, and that's what she follows. She doesn't necessarily buy into a pre-outlined set of rules like some ones do, and even some social subtype 6s. I'm not going to touch on subtypes in this episode, by the way. Normally, I try and either do tri-types or subtypes, but today we're doing tri-types. Maybe next time we'll do subtypes. Who knows? But the one thing for Lauren is, the situation where she's like with Stephen, like that's kind of the whole crux of the matter with season 1 is like Lauren wants Stephen, but Stephen's with Kristin. The thing that can happen sometimes, which I'm not dogging on ones here, by the way, this is just something really interesting that no one really has highlighted, at least that I've heard. So I thought I'd bring it to you because it's super interesting. Ones can tend to not let their right hand know what their left hand is doing. So even though something, and I just talked about this in the Divergent episode with Janine, sometimes ones can do something that's actually wrong, but in their minds, they're doing it for the right reasons. So to them, it's right. Or, because they are always trying to be so perfect and such a great example to others, they can tend to feel entitled to certain things. And so I think the situation that we could be seeing between Stephen and Kristen, or I'm sorry, between Stephen and Lauren is Lauren's like, I've known him longer And she doesn't really think too highly of Kristin, at least that we can tell. It might be a different story behind the scenes, but in the show, she doesn't like Kristin. And so we see that she ends up having a relationship with Stephen before the show starts, and they talk about it a lot in season 1. Well, I would actually say that Lauren knew Stephen was with Kristin. I mean, it's very clear, small area, you know who's with who. And I think in a way, Lauren could have felt entitled, not to say that Stephen didn't lead her on, because I think he does do that, but she may have felt entitled to a relationship with Stephen because she's known him longer, and Kristin might not be what she would consider a good person. And I think she even said that in the series. I might be misconstruing her with Heidi, but I do know the show pretty well. So I'm thinking I'm right, but if I'm wrong, call me out. Anyways, another thing I really want to highlight is the fact that she can tend to act differently with Lo, which obviously, like, it's her best friend. You're going to maybe act a little bit more relaxed with your best friend. But this is what I'm saying. Because of that, you have your guard down a little bit more. And so you're more of your true self. And I think we do hear a lot of times, between her and Lo, she can tend to be a little judgy or lean into Lo being judgy and doesn't correct her on it, which, a lot of times ones will probably be on either end of the spectrum. They'll either be like, hey, don't say that, or they'll be like, you're right, that's bad. And again, not dogging on ones. I'm just saying this is interesting to see. Plus, these moments have been produced in a way to make her kind of seem like both the victim and the villain in a strange, odd way. So, take that for what you will. And then I chose that 9 wing for her because we see in season 2, she ends up coming back from San Francisco, and what she really desires is her comfort zone. She obviously doesn't do super well outside of what's known, what's comfortable. I mean, not many people do, right? There's not a whole lot of people out there that are like, yay, let's get out of our comfort zones. Those are like the sweet sevens of the world, and hey, more power to you. But typically people like to stay with what they know. And I think it was a jarring experience. I think it didn't afford her the peace and the comfort that she was used to with knowing her surroundings, which I understand because I have a connection to 9 as a 6. And so we see her end up going back home. And she even says, she's like, I'm so much happier. I feel so much better here. And she found something that worked for her. And again, 9s are always seeking that peace. They don't like their inner world being disrupted. And that might be what happened in San Francisco. She might have felt like she was losing a grip on her peace because there was so much unknown. And so by moving back home, she was able to regain some of that and still live her life and still, be an adult. It was just looking different than what some other people were doing. I think also we see her very gut heavy. We don't see her very feelings heavy. And I think we see that in Laguna Beach and in the hills. And what I mean by that is 1s and 9s are both in the gut triad. And so I'll actually go through all the triads super quick if you're just finding out about the Enneagram and you're wanting to know more. So the gut triad is 9s, 1s, and 8s. The head triad is 7s, 6s, and 5s. And then the heart triad is 4s, 3s, and 2s. So if she was a 1 with a 2 wing, she'd have a little bit of, a connection to the heart triad more than if you're a 1 wing 9, because then you have a wing in your same triad where, some of the types like a 4, a 1, an 8, they can have connections to a different triad with their wing. But like for me, you're stuck right in the middle. And so you've got both head types on either side. So that's just a little random piece of trivia for you. But I think it does make sense for her. And then let's talk about her tri-type really quick, because I think that's super interesting with her especially. And if you've never heard me talk about tri-types, or if you're like, what is this term? I'm new to the Enneagram. I'm going to go through it super quickly for you. So we just talked about all of the different triads. So we have, remember, gut, head, heart. Now, your tri-type, we'll use mine as an example, is the type you identify with most out of each of those triads. So for me, I'm a type 6. That's my core type. So that is located in the head triad. Then my type I identify with most in the gut triad is a type 8. And in the heart triad, I identify most with a type 4. So my tri-type is now a 6, 8, 4. And so we'll go with Lauren's here really quick, but I said that I think she's a 1, 3, 6. And remember, 1s tend to go more towards being a 6 or a 7 in the head triad. And then in the heart triad, they tend to be more of a 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 2s, but you're going to see more likely 3. And so for her, I chose that because we do see that she has this vision. She wants to achieve things, and she's kind of got like her plan set out. And we see that she's gone on to do really cool things. She's got lines and coals and things like that. And so we see that she's very focused on school, especially like in the hills. You see she's going to FITM. She's really focused. She wants to do well. And again, that's a very one-ish trait, but threes are the achiever. And so they're looking to achieve and do well. And then I chose a 6 for her in the head triad because simply I think she's skeptical of people. And I think that loyalty is really huge to her. And that's maybe where some of the issues come in with her friends. She feels like if you're not going to be with her, then you're against her. And that's a very gut type thing to have anyways. But I think there's definitely a 6 in her tri-type. And then let's talk about Steven. So he's a really interesting one. And I actually ended up changing my mind partway through because I was like, this is like really different. Okay. So originally, I was thinking that he was a 3, and I thought that because he seemed to kind of be playing the field a little bit more and seemed to be wanting to come off a certain way depending on who he's with, which remember, 3s wear masks. Like they're almost never their true self if they're in average to lower levels of health. And, part of this is good. Sometimes when you're in business dealings, you can kind of figure out like, okay, what's the best play here? Or if you walk into a party and you don't know anyone, it can be good because you're able to meld with the crowd. But in this situation, obviously, he's kind of messing with 2 girls' hearts. And so thankfully, homegirl Kristen, she can't be hurt, but he's definitely playing the field. And so that ends up getting into trouble. And he kind of has that 3-ish deceit quality. Because remember, 3s, sin or passion or whatever you want to call it, is deceit. And so I think he definitely has that. But then I was watching this morning just to kind of get like a better sense so I could bring some fresh examples to the table. And I'm like, wait a second. I think he's a 9 because 9s go to 3 in health. And I'm wondering if the reason he's so wishy-washy, or at least appears, right? Because we don't know if it's being produced, but he appears wishy-washy. I'm wondering if that's because he's a 9 that is kind of asleep to his own desires and his own passions and what he actually wants out of life. So I'm wondering if it's that. We see a lot of that kind of back and forth in season 2. And, I got to be honest, I think you can usually tell who a 9 is because they're very relaxed and chill. And remember, he's a teen boy, so he's got more energy just as is. But something in me is telling me that he's a 9. I also think he's doing this thing that 9s do called merging. And what that is basically they tend to take on characteristics of who they're with in order to more or less keep the peace. So I think he becomes a little bit more brazen and witty when he's around Kristen because obviously I almost just said her type, but anyways, I'll save that for the next episode. But she's a little bit more hardcore. And so I think he tends to take on a bit more of that. And then I think when he's with Lauren, he's a little bit more on the chill side, but I think also he's trying to regulate himself. And so I do see more of that 9, but I also see a lot of 3 in Steven. I really do. But I don't know if it's because it's in his tri-type or he just has that connection to 3 because of his arrows. So I'm not really sure, but more or less, he doesn't really know what he wants. He's like, do I want Lauren? Do I want Kristen? I don't know. I think also people don't necessarily want to hit on the fact that 9s, when they're in lower levels of health, are more prone to cheating. And so it sounds like to me what the whole situation was that Stephen and Kristen were together, and then he started hooking up with Lauren, and then he wasn't with Kristen, and then he got back with Kristen and stopped hooking up with Lauren. I don't know. I think I got that right, but either way you slice it, it's just not good because they're like all in the same, circle. So I don't know. I think he's a little bit more asleep than what we think. I think he's kind of just cruising and isn't super decisive. I don't think he's really got strong opinions one way or another on a lot of things. And that's just kind of the 9 thing. Like they do want that peace, and so they're not going to come right out the gate like this is what I think and da 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 da. Like they're just gonna hold back a little bit more, wait to see what the situation is, and then they're going to come in with their opinion. And for his tri-type, I ended up deciding on a 9-3-7. And of course, I explained 9 already, but let's talk about the 3. I think, like I said, he does have that three-ish vibe where he's able to kind of keep things under the radar and come off kind of cheeky and cute. And I think he does wear that mask when he's around, especially Lauren. I think he's able to sell it more with her. And I'm actually really surprised because she seems like she'd pick up on that quicker. And it feels like he was so good at coming off very sweet and like, oh, haha. And like, oh my gosh, if you've been watching Whitney and Tim's channel, the reaction videos, he is so like grabby and like, he like noogies the girls. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But he seems to kind of be just like embracing his three. And that's why I think it's really hard to tell if he is a nine or a three. And then the other thing, I think he's a seven. Excuse me. I think he has a seven in his tri type because he seems to kind of always wanting to be having fun. Like he's just like, I want to go do things. He seems to be leaving gatherings earlier just to go like have fun. And so I think that's what we see from him, where he's like, you know what? I want to go do what's most fun. I don't want to stay somewhere where it's not popping. And so we see him leaving, especially like Trey's house in the first episode. He leaves. He left Lauren's barbecue end of summer thing at the end of season 2 because he was like, we're gonna have more fun over here. So he's always popping around to what's going to be the most fun, the most enjoyable. And, in a way, can you blame him? But also, he seems to choose that over maybe what he should do, which is staying with his friends if he's already committed to doing that. And then I'm just going to breeze really quickly through the rest of the cast because I feel like they're not as prevalent. I feel like more of the season 2 cast ends up being a bigger part of the story in season 1. But again, I want to separate them because I feel like there's different situations. So let's talk about Lo. Initially, I really liked Lo. I thought she was the shiz. And then rewatching it, I'm like, she's a little bit of a problem, And I think she and Lauren got along so well because Lo is a 2 wing 3. And I think she and Lauren both kind of connect on that too. And so for her, she definitely is someone who wants to save face. She's not going to tell you something to your face if she doesn't like what you're wearing. There's that one situation where she and Morgan, I think, wore the same prom dress, but it was like different colors. Total taboo, but whatever. Yeah, she basically like called her a bad word, and it's like she didn't know, like, oh my gosh. But she wants to stand out, she wants to be different. And I think a lot of times she says stuff without thinking. I think she just kind of says whatever's on her mind, which I love. I think it's very funny. And you can't be so easily offended, but there are times where you're like, dude, like you gotta reel her back in because that is very rude. And especially to poor Morgan. But I think Lo is a 2 because, to be honest, she seems to have that very 2-ish vibe where she'll kind of do like the different characteristics, I guess, or different personality traits depending on who she's with. And I think sometimes she can be very blunt. She kind of has that 8 going on where 2s go to 8 when they're in stress. And I think sometimes she can be like that. She just blusters and is very like, whatever's on my mind, I'm going to say it. And then sometimes I think she's a little bit more of the 3 where she's not comfortable or doesn't like what's going on, but she hides behind a bit of a mask and is like, I'll just pretend for a bit, And so I don't know exactly what we're seeing with her. I really want to know what was going on behind the scenes because I feel like there's more to the story. But one of my all-time favorite Lo moments is when I think it's the end of season 1. She calls Talon, and this is like such a 2 move to be like, hey, what's up? Can I come use your hot tub? It's so great because like 2s, they're just like friends with everybody. Even if she wasn't super close with Talon, I still think she would do that because that's just how 2s roll. They've never met a stranger. And so she just calls him and she's like, can I come use your hot tub right now? And then she also is kind of like a bit of the mom friend. Like she gives me soccer mom vibes, which I think is so funny because she is very corrective in what she says. And she just like, she doesn't even think about it. And I think we do see that in that scene with Talon when they actually get to his house and he's just talking and she's just like, and what are you gonna do about it? Like she wants to get the show on the road, and she is a much more motivated to than I think a lot of 2s get credit for, which I don't understand that discrepancy. 2s are usually very studious, they're great in school, they do achieve things at their jobs, especially with that 3 wing. She's gone on to do so many different things in life. She was obviously working at Smashbox in the hill or on the hills, and I think she went to culinary school. Like she's just done a lot of cool things. And I think for her, she likes having her close group of friends. I don't think she wants like this large group of acquaintances. Like she's not going to put a lot of energy into these acquaintances. She's going to put them into her true lasting friendships. And that's why I think she and Lauren were able to recover their friendship so quickly after the whole tabloid situation. Oh, and I also think Lowe's tri-type is a 278. And I chose a 7 for her because again, she just seems like she doesn't want to like soak in when things happen, like if there's a bad situation, she's just like, whatever, and just gets over it. Like she doesn't really want to acknowledge that maybe she's hurt or doesn't want to like delve into it. She's just like, whatever, life goes on, which more power to her. And then I also chose the type 8 for her because I do think that she has that protector, like mama bear kind of instinct. And I think we do see if she feels like someone was mean to her friend, like she's going to go after them. And like I said before, her talking style and her or I should say communication style, that's a better term. Her communication style is very blustery, call it like it is kind of a thing, which is a very 8 move. Okay. And then Trey, I mean, Hallmark type 4. He's going into fashion. We see him with his crazy hats. Oh my gosh, the hats are my favorite. He's always very passionate about what he's talking about. He obviously started a youth organization, and so he's got these aspirations and these ideals. And I definitely think somewhere in there he's in the idealist triad. Whether he's a 1 or a 4, I'm not too sure, but I lean more towards 4. But again, 4s have a connection to 1 and vice versa. So I think for him, we do see that he's realized that he can have an impact on this generation and he's going to do whatever he can to make that happen. And then obviously after high school, he goes to college. Did he go to Parsons? I swear I remember that, but I might be wrong. And then he ended up going to work for Vera Wang, which is so cool and like such a massive thing. I'm like, go Trey. But yeah, he's always shown an interest and he's pretty steady. Like, he obviously was into fashion in the beginning and he's still working in it. So I think that's so cool. And it seems like he and Lauren and like Steven and all them are still friends to this day, which is so sick. Ooh, let's talk about Dieter. Dieter cracks me up. He's like one of my favorite people on the entire show. And he's always up to something. Like he's always got a little something up his sleeve, which is why I typed him as an 8. I think he's an 8 wing 7, but mostly just an 8 for this specific instance. I think we see him a lot trying to get everybody on the same page. He's like wheeling and dealing a little bit. He's like, I've got this situation going on. Do you want to get in on it? He's always just looking to have fun and is looking to kind of up the ante, which I think is amazing. And he seems to be very decisive. Like he doesn't seem as if he's questioning anything. Dieter also seems to be the one that people kind of go to when things are awry. And then I think what really solidified him being an 8 to me is in season 2 during one of the last episodes. The situation happens at the fashion show and Lauren realizes that she just saw Jason and Jessica kissing after they were dating. She's like, what the heck, man? And Dieter goes up to him and is like, excuse me, what did you just do? And then he's like, oh, really? Really? Okay, well, I'll call Jessica right now on speaker and we'll figure this out. And I was like, okay, total 8 and total 7. Like he was able to just come up with things on the fly and he's going to stick up for his best friend, Elsie. He loves her. And so that's where I'm just like, Dieter's totally an 8 and has great advice. Oh my gosh, let's talk about Morgan. I love Morgan. She's she's so funny. Also, there's so many Morgans on the show. I'm talking about Morgan from season 1, and she is fun. She's always looking to like go on the bright side of things. She's like glass half full. Like, I'm cool with my friend Christina and we're BFFs and it's going to be so much fun. And even though I didn't get into BYU Hawaii, I'm still going to go and be part of the scene. I'm like, yeah, girl, get it. But even though she's not the life of the party, she is. Do you know what I'm saying? Like her attitude is life of the party. And I typed her as a 7 wing 6. She just seems to always be reframing, which is a typical 7 thing. When the situation comes up that's like maybe a little dodgy, they're like, let's think of an answer or let's reframe this. How can this be positive? And so I think we see her doing that a lot, especially with that college acceptance situation. She's like, you know what? Even if I don't get in, I'm not going to stay here. I have a plan. I want to go up there and do that. And we're just going to look on the bright side. So I think we see her doing that a lot, especially in her friendship with Christina. When she sees Christina down, she's like, let's pump up the party, do something fun. And so I think she brings a really light, fun vibe to the show. And I wish we would have seen more of her because she really does crack me up. And now she has like a successful kids swimwear line, which is so cool. And while we're at it, let's just talk about Christina. So Christina's so interesting. I genuinely like wasn't really able to get a read on her. It feels like she's probably more of a 3. You know, she seems to kind of be like, I want my own life, I want to do my own thing. Also, in her interactions with her parents, it seems like she just wants to develop her own identity. And I think we see a lot of times that these 3s come from homes that were maybe a little bit more regimented. And obviously, that would have been the case because of her dad's job. You know, it would have been like, we're doing this day, this day, because like he's the pastor of this church. And so they would have kind of had like their weeks planned out. And I think a lot of times the 3 is like, I want to pave my own path. You know, I want to do my own thing. I want to be known for my own thing. And so I think we do see that a bit with her. And maybe, you know, that's even why she's pursuing acting and does the audition for the musicals, which she was so excited to get. And I think she does have that performer instinct. I think she really enjoys becoming a character and performing and getting to showcase her talents. And so I do see a lot of that 3 in her. And I think sometimes she can seem a little detached from emotions, which is the case for 3s, 6s, and 9s because they're at the center of their triads. Is that making sense? So the 6 is obviously in the middle of the head triad, and the 9's in the middle of the gut, and this 3 is in the middle of the heart triad. And so I think for her, you know, she is a little bit slower to react emotionally, but we do see her get emotional on occasion. And she is very loyal to her friends. And people don't really understand that 3s are very loyal. You know, they can even sometimes come off 6-ish. And she obviously loves Morgan. And I think she stayed friends with her friend Gary for like years and years and years. They may even still be friends today. I don't know. But she obviously cares about her friends. She cares about doing something extraordinary. And I mean, that feels very 3 to me. I don't feel like we saw enough of her to like get a wing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would say probably, I don't know, maybe 3 wing 4. I can see that more. I know she said she was like really into certain colors at certain times, which feels very forced to me. And then I think that's it. Those are all of the characters or people, whatever, that we really got to see a lot of in season 1. And then obviously excluding all the season 2 people that we'll talk about next time because they're kind of intertwined for that one season. But I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Be sure and follow along on Instagram at Dude I Love That Podcast because I'll have all kinds of fun behind the scenes photos. I always do like vibe posts for each episode. And so I just did a really fun one up for Divergent and The Fault in Our Stars. And then, of course, doing the summer throwback, we had to do H2O and Aquamarine, which had really fun ones. So be sure and check everything out over there. I also post when I'm uploading polls, all that fun stuff. And then if you want to follow along for more Enneagram content, be sure and follow me at Hey, It's Liv James. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.